Of course, within months of that presidential visit, the whole world was stunned to learn that John F. Kennedy had been struck down by an assassin's bullet in Dallas in Texas. But there's still, along this country road, you still get a trickle of tourists coming to visit the ancestral home of the man who inspired such hope in a whole generation around the world. Now, the Kennedy homestead is now run by Mary Ann Ryan, a daughter of the house, so to speak. Her sister Josie, who would have played a major part in the organization of the presidential visit, has since very tragically died, leaving a young family. Her husband Paddy then died, and later still, more recently, Mrs. Mary Ryan, the elderly Mrs. Ryan, whose home it was.
Later in the morning, the presidential party makes its way to County Wexford. The first stop is Duncanstown, near New Ross, from which his great-grandfather, Patrick Kennedy, had immigrated to the United States 100 years earlier. Here he is greeted by relatives and friends, and the informality of this visit remembered by all who witnessed it. His hostess is Mary Ryan, his nearest living relative in Ireland. In the concrete farmyard from which Patrick Kennedy had immigrated, tables are set for a tea party, and soon President Kennedy becomes the central figure in a lighthearted family picnic. He drank several cups of tea and ate salmon sandwiches, joking with his cousin as to whether the salmon had been illegally poached from the Barrow River. He cut a ceremonial cake and handed slices around. He asked for neighbors and distant relatives and invited officials and security guards to join in eating the food. Then, proposing a toast, he said, "We will drink a cup of tea to all the Kennedys who have gone away and to all who have remained at home." His enthusiasm and obvious enjoyment became so infectious that an official occasion became a happy family reunion, and security measures and the demands of the official program went by the board. And so John Fitzgerald Kennedy had visited the home of his ancestors. The visit may have been brief, but the people of Duncanstown regard it as a signal honor, and the story of that visit would no doubt be retold for decades around the firesides of County Wexford. As a remembrance of his visit, he plants special trees and pats the heads of local children lined up outside the farmyard. From Duncanstown, the presidential party moves to the town of Wexford. Here, a schoolboy band greets him with the song of the great Wexford hero, Kelly, the boy from Killaan, which so touched the president that he joined in the chorus. On the docks of Wexford stands the 10-foot-high statue of John Barry, father of the American Navy and commander in the first naval battle of the American Revolution. He was also the first man to receive a commission in the United States Navy. There is the usual parade through the narrow streets of ancient Wexford. Even billboards and rooftops are utilized on this special occasion.
My country welcomed so many sons and daughters of so many countries, Irish and Scandinavian and German, Italian, and all the rest, and gave them a fair chance and a fair opportunity. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is Irish of descent. The leader of the Senate is of Irish descent. And what is true of the Irish has been true of dozens of other people. In Ireland, I think you see something of what is so great about the United States. And I must say that in the United States, through millions of your sons and daughters and cousins, 25 million, in fact, you see something of what is great about Ireland.
The next stop is New Ross, a port town at the mouth of the Barrow River. It was from here that Patrick Kennedy had sailed for the New World 100 years before. In New Ross, he receives a tumultuous welcome. The man whose fame circles the earth is coming to honor them. The great-grandfather who had brought the name and fame of the Kennedys to the United States was one of themselves. Now his great-grandson is returning, not only as a Kennedy, but as president of the greatest nation on earth. And for that reason, they are justly proud. On a platform along the Barrow River, the president accepts the gifts of the townspeople for Mrs. Kennedy. The presentation is made by Andy Minahan, the stately bearded figure who conducted the ceremony in a spirit of humor. Accompanying the president are his two sisters, Mrs. Eunice Schreiber and Mrs. Jean Smith. The visit to New Ross was indeed informal, and here the president was completely relaxed, and his subsequent speech was a highlight of the Wexford visit.
When my great-grandfather left here to become a cooper in East Boston, he carried nothing with him except two things: a strong religious faith and a strong desire for liberty. And I'm glad to say that all of his great-grandchildren have valued that inheritance. Yeah. If he hadn't left, I'd be working over at the Albatross Company. Or perhaps for John D. Kelly. In any case, we are happy to be back here. About 50 years ago, an Irishman from New Ross traveled down to Washington with his family, and in order to tell his neighbors how well he was doing, he had his picture taken in front of the White House and said, "This is our summer home. Come and see us." Well, it's our home also in the winter, and I hope you will come and see us. Thank you.
Among the welcomes extended to President Kennedy during his Irish visit, none could outdo in concentrated enthusiasm the reception he received during his whirlwind tour of Cork City. As the motorcade swings through the city, the crowds press forward, the men cheer, and the women of Cork shower his car with rose petals. Inside City Hall, he is introduced by the mayor of Cork, and the president brings his audience to their feet on several occasions by his jovial remarks and witty comments. Outside City Hall, the enthusiasm of the crowd is beyond restraint, and even the security guards have difficulty clearing a path for the president. When the president observed an Irish policeman using a little force on an over-enthusiastic admirer, he was heard to say, "Don't do that. That man is a good friend of mine." Finally, the motorcade gets underway. It was here that an ardent admirer held onto the president's hand too long as the car moved forward, and the president fell headlong into the back seat. But fortunately, he was none the worse of the experience. June 29th was the final day of his Irish visit. He arrives in Galway to be welcomed by Mayor Ryan and Bishop Brown of Galway. On hand to greet him was an American Legion unit made up of Irishmen who served in World War II and for whom the president had a special regard. A group of 400 children wearing costumes making up the colors of the Irish flag form a special honor guard for the president. He chats and jokes with his youthful admirers. Then the presidential party gets on its way through the narrow, winding streets of ancient Galway. Arriving at City Hall, he poses for pictures with the members of the Galway City Council. Then he becomes a free man of the ancient city, and in a subsequent speech refers to his native Boston as the adopted home of thousands of Galway men.
If the day was clear enough, and if you went down to the bay and you looked west, and your sight was good enough, you would see Boston, Massachusetts. And if you did, you'd see down working on the docks there some Dohertys and Flahertys and Ryans and cousins of yours who have gone to Boston and made good. I wonder if you could perhaps let me know how many of you here have a relative in America who you would admit to, if you'd hold up your hand. You send us home covered with gifts, which we can barely carry, but most of all, you send us home with the warmest memories of you and of your country. So I must say that though other days may not be so bright as we look towards the future, that the brightest days will continue to be those in which we visited you here in Ireland. If you ever come to America, come to Washington, and I tell them, if they wonder who you are at the gate, that you come from Galway. The word will be out, and when you do, Bekeith Mille Falche, which means in Gaelic 100,000 welcomes.
The visit to Galway is over. At Salt Hill, his helicopter is ready and waiting. And John Fitzgerald Kennedy leaves behind old friends with fresh memories. For it is certain that no visitor to Ireland left behind such an indelible impression as did this youthful statesman with the magnetic personality. As he leaves, a fishing fleet lines the waters of Galway Bay as a tribute to the man who had graced their shore and who in turn had stolen their hearts away. Mrs. Frances Cordell, the mayor, welcomes the president to Limerick, and her eloquent address was afterwards described by him as the best he had heard since he came to Europe. This Limerick visit was unscheduled until the day before, when the president first met the charming mayor. Although this visit was unexpected, thousands thronged Green Park Racecourse to see him. After all, John Fitzgerald Kennedy had ties with Limerick, because it was here his maternal ancestors were born. Limerick City, said the mayor, claims the Fitzgerald in you, and we too are proud of your mother Rose and her dynamic father, Honey Fitz. Indeed, all Ireland was proud of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and perhaps Prime Minister Sean Lemass summed it up when he said, "We are proud of his Irish origin and the honor he has brought to our race." At Shannon Airport, the presidential plane is ready to take him home to Washington. An Irish Army unit lines the runway at Shannon, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy takes a last salute on Irish soil. In his farewell speech, he says, "This is not the land of my birth, but it is a land for which I hold the greatest affection. The wonderful hospitality I have been showered with has indeed made me feel that I had come home. From the bottom of my heart, I say, God bless Ireland." A group of Irish folk singers whom he had heard earlier have composed a special song in his honor. He listens in silence with bent head. As he leaves, we recall the words of the Boston poet John Boyle O'Reilly and feel they express the sentiments of the Irish people. Thank God for one dear friend, with face still radiant, with the light of truth, whose love comes laden with the scent of youth. Then he went as he came, like a whisper in the dawn. But Ireland and her people were the richer for the visit of John Fitzgerald Kennedy.